Hello gang. Welcome back to your weekly slice of true crime with me, Yinka, Bokinni. Of course, this is the place where you get your bite-sized true crime fix. I stick 10 minutes on the clock each week and tell you as much as physically possible, as much as I'm capable of, about a case that I have picked for you. And this one is one that has stuck with me for many years. It's one of those stories that once you hear it, once you find the details of it, I don't think that it's going to leave your mind ever. I think that's it. For eternity, you'll be thinking about it. Fair warning, this case does involve crimes against children. We're going to stick 10 minutes on the clock without further ado and welcome ya to the anniversary. Let's go, shall we? Shwa-na-na-na, 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 shwa-na-na-na. It was this week in 2012, 9 years ago, that a fire ripped through a house in Derby here in the United Kingdom. Neighbours of 18 Victory Road were horrified when in the early hours of the morning of the 11th of May, they were awoken to the shouts of fire. Jade Philpott, who was 10, John, who was 9, Jack, who was 7, Jessie, who was 6, and Jaden, who was only 5, were all killed that night in the blaze. Their brother Dwayne, who was 13, died in hospital 2 days later, and it would later transpire that their father, Mick Philpott, was responsible for the fire that killed 6 of his children. He had poured petrol through the letterbox and set the house alight. Today, I want to talk to you about the events that led up to the fire, as well as how Mick Philpott was caught in one of the stupidest plans I've ever heard of in my life. And while in this series that I do here on YouTube, I really hate concentrating on the perpetrator of the crimes, and if there is one man who doesn't deserve any more attention, it's the piece of arse that is Mick Philpott. I think that it's so necessary to get into his history just to show you and to see and to try and dissect how something like this can actually happen. He was born in 1956 in Derby in England. Mick Philpott was actually a local celebrity with 17 children by a number of women. What a guy. He showed very early on in his life that he was capable of extreme violence. When he was just 19, he met a girl called Kim Hill, and she was 14 years old. You're going to notice a theme of today, and that's that Mick Philpott liked extremely young women. Girls, they weren't women. 14 is not a woman, that's a child. He was super abusive in this relationship. He beat Kim up both in public and in private, and one time he attacked her in a packed pub with a pool cue, breaking her nose. Blood was pouring everywhere, and she just sat there while everyone carried on drinking their pints like it was normal. Kim did try to leave him. He broke her arm with a hammer, and it gets worse actually, because when she did finally gather up the strength, the courage to leave him, he broke into her house in the middle of the night and he stabbed her 27 times with a 9-inch knife. And when her mum was awoken to the screaming, she was stabbed 11 times. He tried to kill them, he wanted to kill them, but both of them survived. When the ambulance and police came to the scene, he was actually sitting on the stairs covered in their blood and told them not to bother because he did a good job on them. And he was found guilty of attempted murder and GBH. Mick Philpott was only handed 7 years in prison. Can you imagine? Doing this series, right, I have come to realise that sentences here in the UK are lenient at times, but this is ridiculous. Because my thing is that if you try to kill somebody, because you're not skilled, strong, or the police get there fast, or if you fail in that killing, why do you get less time in prison? The intent is there. Like, I understand that the person survived, but what you did is the same that you would have done if they had died, so shouldn't you be punished accordingly? But anyway, it's ridiculous. He served 3.5 years of that 7-year sentence. He got out for good behaviour after wielding his knife like a maniac. 3.5 years. Hello, British justice system. Did somebody say that you're not doing your job properly? When he did get out, he married a woman called Pamela, and they would go on to have 3 children. And of course, no surprises, it was an extremely abusive relationship. Now, when Mick was 37, he met a girl, not a woman, she was a girl who was 14, called Heather Keogh. And at the time he began her relationship with her, she was underage because he is a paedophile. Now, she ran away with him on her 16th birthday, and soon she was pregnant with 2 boys. But Mick Philpott would abuse her throughout the whole of their relationship, and eventually Heather would abandon her children in a bid to get away from Mick. And Mick loved to take his women to court. He loved a good old court case. For somebody who is a raging criminal, this man loved to sue people. It took Heather ages to regain custody of her children, and he also tried to get Pamela, his ex-wife, custody of her kids as well, but thank God he was unsuccessful. He met Mairead Duffy in 2001 when she was just 19, and they moved in together quickly. And then shortly after Mairead moved in, he met Lisa Willis, who was just 16, and she quickly became part of their relationship, and she moved in with the couple. Mick actually put a caravan in the garden of the house they shared together, and he would kind of rotate, and the house had Mairead in it and the caravan had Lisa in it, and it was like a sexy, I'm gonna sleep here sometimes and sleep here other times. Phil and Mairead got married with Lisa as their chief's bridemaid in 2003, and the three of them and the 11 kids, now we're up to 11, lived together in a 3-bedroom council house, and they just kind of had babies one after the other, like hokey cokey. Instead of foot, he's putting his willy in and his willy out. I wish I didn't say that. Throughout the time that the three of them were in this relationship, the women would go to work, but Phil wouldn't. Why? Well, he would get super benefits from the UK government and wages from his wife and his girlfriend as well. Cue the UK telly loving this guy and making him famous. Come on down. He started featuring on the news and in local media, complaining about not being offered a bigger house for his family because there were something like 15 of them just living in a 3-bedroom house along with that caravan in the garden. He earned the moniker Shameless Mick, which was splashed across all the tabloids, Daily Mail, I'm looking at you. And I think a few people, called him a leech and a scrounger, and he even went on Jeremy Kyle to complain about the benefit system as well. He's just so gross. And I actually remember watching this episode of Jeremy Kyle, please, I know it's been cancelled. If you're not sure what Jeremy Kyle was, it's actually a show here in the UK. It's a bit like Jerry Springer, a bit like Maury, You Are Not the Father, maybe some Uncle Phil? No, Dr. Phil, Catch Me Outside. It wasn't great, and it got cancelled a few years ago because a participant actually committed suicide after failing a lie detector test, so you can imagine what sorts of going-ons were on Jeremy Kyle. Anne Widdecombe, the politician, even did a documentary on the family, and it's so bad because Mick Philpott is gross. He's so gross. Eventually, Lisa had had enough. The abuse didn't stop and she moved out with some of the kids. And Mick decided that he wanted to frame her for a crime. So this idiot decided that he was not only going to burn down his home, but that he would make himself the hero of the day as well. So Mick, Mairead, his wife, and a guy called Paul, and I've attached a link so that you can read about this fool's backstory as well, hatched a plan. The day before a scheduled custody hearing with Lisa, who wanted to get her kids off of Mick, they would make it look like Lisa had tried to kill Mick. And of course, this would make her lose custody of the kids, and Mick could keep them, and he could have all of that benefit money. So Mick and Paul were gonna put petrol through the mailbox and then set it on fire, and then they put a ladder at the back of the house, and then Mick was going to go and rescue the kids, and ta-da. And I can't, it doesn't even feel real. The fire spread so much quicker than the drunk idiots thought it would. It raged out of control, and 5 of the children died sleeping that night. Jade, John, Jack, Jesse and Jaden, they died in that home, and Dwayne, he died 2 days later in hospital because when they set the house on fire, all of the kids were sleeping upstairs. The autopsy says that their official causes of death were smoke inhalation, and the fire investigation found that the room that the kids were sleeping in reached 500 degrees Celsius at one point in the flames, so they didn't stand a chance. Mick's plan actually seemed to work at first. Lisa and her brother-in-law were brought in for questioning about the fire, but they were let go pretty quickly. And while the police got to work on their investigation, Mick and Mairead, they called a press conference. I know I've used this word a lot today, but it's just so gross. Like, it's so gross. And I know that we don't know how we would act in times of extreme trauma, but this isn't it. It's not it. The tissue is dry, sir. The tissue is dry. I can't with the fakery and the dancery. It was just unbelievable. And of course, it made the police super suspicious. Mick was even flirting with a police officer at the press conference. He invited her back to his hotel room. Obviously, she said no, but the police had covertly installed recording equipment. They got the warrant to do so because they found evidence that Mick was involved in the fire. They found petrol on his clothes, and the recording from this hotel room was damning. He was quizzing Mairead on what she said to the police. He was going over her story, asking if she was crying, and he pretty much confesses. They were arrested on suspicion of murder just 2 weeks after the fire, with Paul being arrested shortly after. Police had found petrol on his clothing as well. The charges were downgraded to manslaughter when it was proven that they didn't intend to kill their children, but they acted in a way that caused their death. They were all found guilty. Mick was sentenced to life with a minimum of 15 years. Mairead and Paul both got 17 years each with a minimum of 8. And since then, Mairead has actually been released from prison. In December 2020, she was released after serving 7.5 years of her sentence. And our time, ladies and gentlemen, the beeping is a beeping. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our time is finished, and that's all I can tell you on the case of Mick Philpott. I have read and watched a lot of documentaries that have defined him as a psychopath. He's been officially diagnosed as one. He shows no regard for the rules of society. He's impulsive, irresponsible, a pathological liar, a grandiose personality, manipulative. He has lack of empathy and remorse. And I have linked everything that I used for this case, including that episode of Britain's Most Evil Killers and a Red-Handed podcast episode on this case, as well as all of the articles and stuff as well. Thank you for watching. Yes, we scratched the surface of somebody who committed one of the most senseless and unthinkable crimes that I think I've ever come across while doing this series, and I hope that I've tantalised you just a little bit to go and do some research of your own. As always, if you like my content, if you enjoy what I do, please, please, please make sure you subscribe, and you'll get your weekly dose of 10-minute true crime. And I'll see you next week when I'm covering a brand new story. I hope you have a good week. Goodbye, so long, sayonara, see you later. Don't let the door hit ya. Thank you for watching.